Hey, what's up, everybody? If you're enjoying the video, please hit that subscribe button and give a thumbs up. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. It really helps support the channel and allows me to keep creating content for you guys.
My name is Ji-hye. I remember the day I married him. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and expectation. My heart felt light, buoyant, ready to sail into a future painted in bright, hopeful colors. I wasn't naive. I knew marriage wasn't a fairy tale. But I believed in us. I believed in the quiet strength I saw in Min-jun, my husband, and the promise of a shared life, shared burdens, shared joys. We moved into a small apartment, just ours. It felt like a sanctuary. The first few weeks were beautiful, a delicate dance of learning each other's rhythms. Then life, as it always does, presented its first hurdle. It was small, mundane even. A misunderstanding at my new job, a harsh word from my boss that stung more than it should have. I came home, my shoulders heavy, wanting only to share the weight with Min-jun, to hear a comforting word, maybe a simple, "That sounds difficult." I sat beside him on the sofa, the city lights twinkling outside our window, a stark contrast to the sudden gray feeling in my chest. I started talking, recounting the day, the tension, the unexpected tears that had pricked my eyes in the bathroom stall. I looked at him, waiting for that connection, that empathy. He listened, yes. He nodded. And then he sighed. Not a sympathetic sigh, but one laden with weariness, a familiar weight I hadn't recognized then. "Ah, Ji-hye," he said, his voice flat, dismissive. "Is that all?" "That's nothing." My breath hitched. "Nothing?" It hurt. He shifted, turning slightly away. "You think that's hard? You don't know hardship. You should have seen what I went through at my first job. 17-hour days, sleeping under the desk, managers who cursed at you like dogs. That was hard. What you're talking about, it was harder for me. Much, much harder." The words hung in the air, cold and heavy. Harder for him. My small pain, my genuine hurt, was instantly minimized, flattened, erased by the vast, insurmountable landscape of his own suffering. I felt a prickle of confusion, then a strange guilt. Was I being dramatic? Was my experience truly so insignificant compared to his? He had endured so much, he always hinted at it, this silent weight he carried from his past struggles. I pushed down my own feelings, nodding slowly. Maybe he was right. Maybe I just didn't understand real hardship. The hopeful colors of my new life seemed to dim just a little. It was unsettling, yes, but I dismissed it. A simple misunderstanding. He was just trying to put things in perspective. He loved me. He wouldn't intentionally hurt me. Right? That first instance wasn't an anomaly. It was the opening note of a symphony of dismissal that would come to define our life together. It started subtly. A stressful project at work? That's nothing. I pulled all-nighters for weeks once. It was harder for me. Feeling overwhelmed by managing the household, the bills, and trying to maintain my own sanity? You think that's hard? My mother had to raise 3 kids while working 2 jobs. That was hard. It was harder for me. Even joyous occasions like planning our first trip could be overshadowed. I'd mention the stress of coordinating flights and hotels, and he'd counter with a dramatic tale of a backpacking trip he took in his youth, fraught with danger and discomfort. "You have it easy with internet bookings," he'd scoff. Trying to navigate foreign cities with just a map and no money, it was harder for me. It became a reflex for him. Any expression of difficulty, stress, or even mild inconvenience on my part was immediately met with a detailed account of his own, always more severe, more heroic, more real struggle. His past wasn't just history, it was a weapon, wielded to invalidate my present. Slowly, insidiously, this pattern began to erode my sense of self. I started questioning my own feelings. Was I weak? Was I incapable? Was my perception of reality flawed? When I hesitated to take on a challenging task at work, he'd say, "Why are you so scared?" I faced down impossible deadlines every day. It was harder for me, but I did it. "You should be able to handle this easily." His words, cloaked in the guise of encouragement, felt like a whip, lashing me for my perceived inadequacy, always measured against the impossible yardstick of his own amplified suffering. His mother, my husband's mother, a woman who held quiet, formidable power in the family, noticed the dynamic. But she didn't intervene. Instead, she would sometimes echo his sentiments, comparing my relatively comfortable life now to the hardships of her generation. Min-jun is right, Ji-hye. Young people today don't know real struggle. Back in my day. Her words weren't malicious, perhaps, but they reinforced the narrative. His struggles were significant, mine were not. His father remained mostly silent, a tacit agreement in his quiet presence. I tried to talk to Min-jun about it directly. It feels like you don't hear me, I'd say, my voice trembling with suppressed emotion. When I tell you I'm struggling and you immediately say, it was harder for me, it feels like you're dismissing my pain. He would look genuinely puzzled, sometimes even hurt. Dismissing you? Ji-hye, I'm trying to help you. I'm showing you that people overcome much worse. I went through terrible things and I survived. I'm giving you perspective. You're being overly sensitive. Overly sensitive. That familiar phrase, the gaslighting toolkit. I was being difficult. I was ungrateful. I was making his attempts to help into an attack. The suffocation tightened. I stopped sharing. I built walls around my own experiences, my own emotions. It was easier to suffer in silence than to have my pain belittled and used as a platform for his self-aggrandizement. But the isolation grew. I started feeling like a stranger in my own home, a supporting character in the epic drama of Min-jun's past suffering. My achievements felt small, my failures magnified, all through the lens of his constant comparison. His control wasn't overt shouting. It was subtle, psychological. By making my struggles seem insignificant, he subtly convinced me that I was less capable, less resilient, less deserving of support. My autonomy dwindled. Decisions about our finances, our future plans, even small daily choices, felt weighed down by his unspoken judgment, always measured against his narrative of past deprivation and ultimate triumph. He was the hero of his story and I wasn't even a proper damsel in distress because my distress wasn't valid enough. The air in our apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt thin, suffocating. Every interaction felt like navigating a minefield, carefully choosing my words lest they trigger another performance of his superior suffering. The true breaking point came crashing down during a crisis I couldn't possibly have faced alone. It wasn't a job issue or a domestic squabble. It was our daughter. Our precious little Hannah fell gravely ill. A sudden, terrifying diagnosis that ripped the ground from beneath our feet. The hospital room was a sterile, silent battlefield. Days blurred into nights, filled with the hum of machines, the hushed voices of doctors, and the cold knot of fear in my stomach. I was a shell of myself, running on adrenaline and sheer maternal will. I barely slept, barely ate. Every test result, every slight change in her condition, sent tremors through my body. I needed my husband. I needed his strength, his comfort, his partnership. I needed him to be with me, truly present in this shared nightmare. One particularly harrowing night, after receiving some difficult news, I finally crumpled. I sobbed, raw and heartbroken, leaning against the cold hospital wall. Min-jun found me there. Min-jun, I choked out, my voice thick with tears and exhaustion. I don't know if I can do this. This is too much. Our baby. I looked at him, pleading with my eyes for empathy, for a simple acknowledgement of the sheer, unbearable weight crushing me. For the first time in years, I let the full force of my pain show. He looked at me, his expression weary but not with shared grief. It was the familiar weariness of someone who had seen it all, endured worse. He didn't put his arm around me. He didn't offer a word of comfort about Hannah. Instead he sighed. That same dismissive sigh. Yes, Ji-hye. It's hard, he said, his voice devoid of warmth. But you think this is hard? Do you remember when my father's business failed? The debt. The shame. I had to work 3 jobs just to help keep us afloat, barely slept, ate instant noodles for months. That was hard. This. You have insurance, doctors, a comfortable place to stay here. It was harder for me. Much harder. Harder for him. In that moment, standing in a hospital hallway while our child fought for her life, he compared the potential death of his daughter to financial difficulty from years ago. Something inside me snapped. The years of suppressed hurt, the suffocation, the doubt, the isolation, it all surged to the surface, a tidal wave of righteous fury. But before the words could erupt, a chilling realization struck me, a twist that turned my fury into icy dread. I remembered fragmented conversations over the years. Whispers from his aunt at a family gathering, comments from an old college friend I'd met once. Little inconsistencies about his hardship story. His father's business had struggled, yes, but it hadn't failed. He had worked part-time, but it was during college, while still receiving a generous allowance from his mother, who had significant personal wealth. The 3 jobs became one flexible part-time role: the sleeping under the desk, a single all-nighter for a project, the instant noodles for months, a phase of student budget eating. His great narrative of struggle wasn't a horrific trauma he overcame. It was an embellished, exaggerated, carefully curated performance. Why? And suddenly I saw it all clearly. He didn't just believe his struggles were harder. He used the narrative of his fabricated hardship to control me, to make me feel small, to justify his lack of support for my genuine difficulties, to avoid responsibility in our shared life because he had already suffered enough. He had built a throne of victimhood out of half-truths and outright lies, and I had been kneeling before it, sacrificing my own reality for years. The air thickened not just with hospital smells, but with the stench of betrayal. I looked at his face, the mask of weary endurance he wore so well, and saw not a suffering man but a manipulator. A cold, calculated strategist who had systematically dismantled my self-worth using a fictional past. Harder for you. My voice was low, trembling not with sorrow anymore but with a terrifying calm. You think this is easier than your made-up stories of ramen noodles and part-time jobs? You absolute monster. He blinked, genuinely taken aback by the ice in my tone. What are you talking about? Made up. Your hardship. I spat the word like poison. It was a lie, wasn't it? A performance. You weren't struggling to survive. You were playing the martyr. And you used it. You used your fake suffering to crush mine. To make me feel worthless. To excuse yourself from being a husband, a partner, a father. The confrontation was explosive. Years of silent resentment, of swallowed pain erupted. I didn't scream. I articulated every instance, every cruel dismissal, every time he had invalidated my reality with his fabricated past. He tried to deny it, to gaslight, to twist my words, but the dam had broken. The truth, raw and ugly, filled the sterile hallway. My breaking point wasn't just emotional. It was the shattering of an illusion, the horrifying realization that the man I married had built our entire dynamic on a foundation of deceit, using his fake hardship as a weapon to control me. In the aftermath of that confrontation, something fundamental shifted. The fear was still there, the bone-deep worry for Hannah, but it was now accompanied by a fierce, cold resolve. I was no longer the Ji-hye who doubted her own feelings, who apologized for her own pain. The illusion had been shattered, and in its place was a hard, unyielding core of determination. I knew I couldn't stay. Not after knowing the truth, not after witnessing his utter lack of empathy in our darkest hour, masked by his pathetic, self-serving narrative. My focus narrowed: get Hannah through this and then get us out. While Hannah slowly, miraculously began to recover, I started making quiet plans. I contacted a lawyer. I gathered documents. I stopped walking on eggshells around Min-jun. I was polite, distant. When he tried to revert to his old patterns, attempting to diminish the hospital ordeal by comparing it to some perceived past slight, I just looked at him with empty eyes. We can discuss this later, Min-jun, I'd say, my voice flat, emotionless. His weapon had lost its power because I knew it was a fake. With Hannah finally home and recovering, I put the plan into motion. I filed for divorce. I expected anger, denial, perhaps even remorse. What I got was something far more insidious, a final twist that revealed the true horrifying extent of his manipulation and the system that upheld it. He didn't fight the divorce on emotional grounds. He fought it by weaponizing his hardship narrative against me, not just privately but publicly within his family, and even hinting at it legally. She never understood. He told his mother, his father, his aunts and uncles, his cousins. I worked so hard, I suffered so much in my youth to build a stable life, and she couldn't handle the slightest difficulty. She's weak, unstable. She's making this up because she's stressed. And they believed him. His family, who had passively accepted his narrative for so long, now actively rallied around him. His mother called me, her voice hard. Ji-hye, how can you do this to Min-jun after all he's been through? You know how much he struggled. You're being selfish. His aunt spread whispers about my mental fragility during Hannah's illness. His father looked at me with disappointment, shaking his head as if I were a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. The twisted genius of his manipulation became horribly clear. His hardship wasn't just about controlling me. It was his shield, his identity within his family, the story that explained any failure and justified any demand. By exposing it as a lie, I wasn't just leaving him. I was attacking the very foundation of his persona within a system that was complicit, either through ignorance or convenience. The unexpected twist wasn't that he had a hidden trauma. It was that his fake trauma was so deeply ingrained, so widely accepted, that exposing it made me the villain. The legal battle, the social fallout within our shared circle. It wasn't about our failed marriage. It was about my audacity to question the established narrative of Min-jun, the man who had suffered so much. I had escaped the suffocation of our marriage, but I hadn't escaped the consequences of his lie. He continued to use his story, painting himself as the victim of an irrational wife who abandoned him after all his supposed sacrifices. The final chilling realization was this. His hardship wasn't just a personal manipulation. It was a virus, infecting perceptions, twisting reality, leaving a trail of doubt and blame that would likely follow me long after the divorce was final. I had broken free, but the shadow of his fabricated suffering and the people who chose to believe in it would forever linger, a haunting reminder that sometimes, the most dangerous betrayals are built not on grand secrets, but on the simple repeated lie that, it was harder for me. And the most suffocating traps are the ones where everyone else believes the bars are simply part of the scenery. The fight wasn't over. It had just moved to a different, more public and perhaps even more isolating battlefield.